All right. Well, we are on and we are live. Tonight's our first broadcast on our new system. Trying to get it to where we can not have Sunday. We had it broken up into 3 sections trying to do the service. And so we're trying a new system tonight. And so it also is on a timer. So it starts at 7. So that's going to be a little change for me, but we will be on time because it goes live and boom, it's on. So hopefully things are going well, working well with it. Tonight we're going to be talking about David and Goliath. And we're just going to kind of go through the story. It's just one chapter, so it's probably not going to be as long as sometimes they are. But we're going to talk about some of the things we see in there and how they kind of give us a little more in-depth into the story. And so we'll kind of look at that as we go through it. But this is found in 1 Samuel 17. So it starts off and it says, "Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soko in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Damim between Soko and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines." So basically what it is the valley of Elah is a very large, just open valley, one of the 5 valley systems that head up into the hill country of Judah and are up towards Jerusalem. And in this, at the end of it, are the Philistine cities down on the plains. Israelites are up in the hills. So the Israelites come down, they meet at this spot, and they set their camps on either side on hills. Big valley in between them. And they are ready to go to battle, but they're kind of getting their terms together, you know. At this time, it's still a little bit of I don't know what you want to call it, a gentleman's game. So they're kind of drawing up their terms. How are we going to do this? And one of the things that we're going to see here is not uncommon to this time frame in warfare. And that was, here it is, it's spring. It's the time that kings go to war. We bring out our armies. We set up our battle lines. We do all that. Hey, you know what? Instead of us all going out here and fighting, let's just send a champion out. And that's what the Philistines decide to do. They're going to send out their one guy. And he challenges somebody from Israel. The 2 of them fight, winner take all, and that's the side that wins. And they don't involve the whole armies. Now, one of the reasons that they would be having this negotiation type thing is because the Philistines, as we're going to see from reading about Goliath, tended to be heavy armor, more, you know, the maul, the scales on the outside. Goliath is saying he's carrying a big javelin and a spear and a sword and a shield and all this kind of stuff. And the Israelites tended to be a little bit less heavy in the armor side. Didn't have as many chariots, didn't have as many things like that. And so they would want to fight more in a hill situation. Let's draw the Philistines over here where their heavy armor is going to be a disadvantage to them. And the Philistines are trying to draw the Israelites down into the valley where their heavy armor is going to be a superior advantage to them. If you're down on the flat, you can move pretty good in that armor. You got to start climbing hills, it becomes a detriment in a hurry. And so the Israelites don't want to go down and face these guys head on because standing in an open flat field, blow for blow, they're going to lose that. But if they can get them up where they can use kind of almost more of a guerrilla tactic where we can fight them against their weaponry, that would be better. So that's why they're out there kind of taunting each other to see if they can draw the Philistines up. And the Philistines are seeing if they can draw the Israelites down. But then they go to this situation where, like I said, it was not uncommon where the Philistines send out Goliath, and he says, just send out your best guy. Let's just do this man to man, and we'll settle it that way. We don't have to fight a big war with it. So that's where we get into it. It says, the Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another with a valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. Now, 6 cubits in a span, I mean, there's some debate as to what actually that would translate into feet and inches, but most people agree it's somewhere around 9 feet, maybe 9 feet, 9 inches, somewhere in that deal. So he's not walking through any doorway in this building, I can tell you that. 9-foot tall guy. And you go, oh, now wait a minute, that's ridiculous. But go back to the descendants of Anak. Go back to when the Israelites came and spied out this land, the promised land. And they faced these giants, these people that were there that they said, we look like grasshoppers to them. And then you move ahead to when they actually took the land, and they fought against the descendants of Anak, these giant people, but they didn't complete the job. What they did is they drove them out of the hill country down into the area of Gath and Azekah and places like that, which became the Philistine cities. And so there probably were descendants of Anak that were still around there, Goliath being one of them. And so it's not, out of the realm of possibility to have these giants, these extremely large people. And so here we see basically one of the descendants. And he's living in Gath, an area that the descendants were known to have been in. He's living there. He comes out as the champion of the Philistines. And it says that he's got a bronze helmet on his head. He wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. Does anybody have their Bible with them tonight? There you go. I was going to say, footnotes always have that stuff in there. About 125 pounds of armor on this guy. But, for a 9-foot tall guy, that probably wasn't that bad of a ratio, but for you or I, But, like 125 pounds of armor on this warrior. And then it says, on his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. Mike? About 15 pounds. Yeah, about 15 pounds. That's a pretty good chunk of iron to be throwing at you. Here's the other thing. It was iron. This is some of the beginning of iron warfare in this region. And so iron is something that the Israelites didn't have much of. And here he's got an iron spearhead, and if they've got even bronze armor, iron's going right through that. It ain't even going to slow down. Bronze is not stopping iron. And so here's this guy very well equipped for battle. And he comes out there and he's ready to start laying down talking some smack, I guess, and laying down the law and saying this is what it is. And it says his shield bearer went ahead of him. He, of course, would have had a shield that he could have taken into battle as well. Goliath stood and shouted at the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul?" He says, why you come out here and even do that? You won't even come get me. You're going to take on our whole army, and you won't even come fight me? Here I am. I'm standing alone in this big field. Come on down. I watched a YouTube channel, and it's a couple that live in Israel. And if you're interested in watching YouTube stuff, I can give you their name afterwards and stuff. But a couple that stay there in Israel or live in Israel, they live in the United States part of the time as well, it sounds like. But they went to this valley. And I've been to this valley, but I didn't do some of the tests that they did. One of the tests that they did is they stood on these hillsides. And the girl stood up on where the Israelites would have been, and the guy walked way down into the valley. And he went out there to where he just looked like a little tiny dot almost. And he turned around and he said, I didn't yell real loud. I mean, he's got a camera with him. He didn't yell real loud, but he just yells, "Hey, why don't you send out your champion?" They changed the angle shot. She's up on the hill and she's like, I can hear him. And it's the kind of an amphitheater type effect between these hills. And she said, you know what? And they had the microphone up there on the camera, and you could. He was yelling stuff down there, and you could hear everything he was saying. A little bit of a delay on it because it was so far away, but you could hear him. And so they said, this is, again, a very feasible thing. The Goliath would walk out. They're all up there in their battle lines, but they're up there on the edge of that hill so they can kind of retreat back into it if they need to. But they're standing there, and he says, why do you even come out here and draw up battle lines? You ain't going to come fight. If you're going to come fight, you come fight me. So why do you even come out here? Let's just give up. You ain't going to do anything. Then it says, choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Then the Philistines said, this day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. So, he's out there just saying, there's not one man among you. There isn't one of you that's willing to come down and fight me. And Israelites sitting up there on the hill looking at this guy are probably looking at each other going, I ain't going down there. You've got to be kidding me. I mean, this guy's huge, and he's well equipped for battle. And here's the thing that I guess is the obvious. It's kind of the elephant in the room. But the Israelites under Saul at this time, now this has been several years since he had his ordeal with Samuel here, but Saul is, and his army even, is not thinking in terms of God delivering him in this battle. So they look at this guy who's 9 feet tall, covered in armor, carrying a big old spear and a sword, and they went, I'm not going to go out there and stand toe-to-toe with that guy. Because they're thinking, I've got to go down there and go blow for blow with him. I've got to stop that big spear. I've got to stop that big sword. If I go down there with him, it's going to be my strength against his strength. And that's what they're all thinking. The thing that we don't see is Saul saying, let's ask God. Or the Israelite army saying, hey, wait, let's stop and ask God. They're fighting under their own power and their own authority, and they're looking at this obstacle and saying, I can't do it. And pretty much theoretically, they couldn't have. If any man would have went down there on his own strength and his own, desire to go stand and fight this guy and would have drawn out traditional weapons and started trading blows with him, they would have lost. And they knew that. And so they're like, can't do it. We can't win this. So it says, on hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. I can't do it. And they're right. They can't. And they're like, what are we going to do? We can't get past this guy. And he's calling us out. He's calling us out like dogs. He's just saying, get out here. Send anybody. I'll fight you. I don't care. And it says, now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse. Ephrathite being from the region of Ephratah, which is Bethlehem. It's the term for Bethlehem. We're going to hear that as we go into the Christmas story, because that's a designator. How do we know that Jesus was born in the Bethlehem in Judah? Well, simple. It says that he was born in Ephratah. Okay, that's Bethlehem in Judea. And that's where David is from. That's why they call him an Ephrathite. Named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons. And in Saul's time, he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Eliab, and the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So he was making that trip back and forth. He was the messenger boy. And he would carry supplies that we're going to see here in just a second up to his brothers who were at the fight. David's considered too young, too small. You're not going to get in the fray with this. You stay home, you take care of the sheep, you take care of Dad, and you run supplies up to the older brothers who are up there working, doing the real man's job of fighting in the army. which really the real men's job at this time was hiding behind the rocks and trees going, man, I ain't going down there to fight that guy. It says, for 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. 40 days. Kept coming out each day. You ready to do this? When you're ready to come down and do this, let's get this over with. I'd sit there all day, wait. Next day, hey, I'm here again. Let's do this. Just send out your champion. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. So, I guess we don't think about this as well, but when an army would go to war, now they've been out there for 40 days. When they would go to war, they would bring a lot of their own provisions. They didn't have the military machine that we think of now with an army. And so if these guys were going to eat, their family had to take them food. And so Jesse, having a large flock of sheep and stuff, sent David up to the fighting lines to give food to his older brothers. He sent up some grain, he set up some bread, things like that. But then he also took a bunch of cheese, because they had goats, they had sheep. So he took up a bunch of cheese and said, give this to the commander of the army for their food as well as for anybody else that needs food, because the nation behind them had to supply the food they were going to have. Now, they've been up there for over a month, and so I'm sure whatever they brought was long since been gone. And David's probably taking more than one trip up there, but he takes the trip up there this time to drop stuff off, and this is when Goliath is out there taunting everybody. And it says, there with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. Early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd, loaded up and set out, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. So Israel, they're big, Come on, let's do this. Yeah, they go out to the field and go, I ain't going out there. I'm staying right here. Yeah, but we sound good in the morning, And it says, Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of the supplies and ran to the battle lines and asked his brothers how they were. Now, here's what David, I think, is expecting. It's morning. I hear the shout from the camp of Israel. I hear the shouts from the camp of the Philistines. They're drawing up the battle lines. There's going to be some action. I'm going to run down, see how my brothers are doing, see if they're still alive even. Because, man, they've been out here for, 40 days. Who knows what kind of fighting's been going on. So I got to go down and check on them and stuff like that. So he goes down there to check on his brothers, expecting to see the battle. And what he sees is a bunch of people standing there looking at each other. Probably thought, I'm guessing you guys are still okay since you've not stepped out on the battlefield yet. Since you haven't left your little hidey hole here. I'm guessing you're fine. But he goes down there to check it out, and instead of finding this battle, he finds people standing there not knowing what to do. And it says, as he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. So I said, man, the guy who will step out there and kill him, you have to kill him. There's that little, you can't go out there and just get slaughtered by him. You have to actually go out there and kill Goliath, but if you do, you're set. Your family doesn't pay taxes anymore. You get a wife and a lot of money. So Saul's trying to really bribe somebody to go out and do this. Go out and be the one who's going to represent Israel. Step out there and take this command. And it says, David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David recognizes it. He's not defying you or me. He's defying God. He's mocking him. He's coming out representing the gods of the Philistines and saying, my God's greater than yours. And the Israelites are going, I'm not going to go out there and fight that guy. But what he's really doing is saying, your God can't protect you. Your God, the God of the armies of Israel, is nothing. He can't get the job done. And David's like, this dude's defying God. Somebody go out and kill him. Somebody go out and put a spear through his heart for blasphemy, if nothing else. Go out and cut this dude's head off. And they all went, yeah, no. No, we're good right here. They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down here only to watch the battle. His brother goes, you have no business being down here. Stop asking about what's going to be done. You're not even one of the warriors here. You're not even a soldier. You're some shepherd boy from down there in Bethlehem. Go back to your sheep. Get out of here. And he was angry with him because he said, you're just here to watch the show. You know, we're the ones who are involved here. We're the ones who are fighting this. And you come down here like you're all that and you're telling us, why doesn't somebody go out and do something? Go back to your sheep. Get out of here. This is man's work. You know, you need to leave, little boy. And he just chewed him out, and it says, what have I done? Can I even speak? He said, what did I do to you? I don't think I did anything wrong. I asked a simple question. What's going to be done for the guy who goes out and kills this guy? Because he's defying God. Again, they didn't want to hear it. His brother didn't want to hear it. He's like, out of here. And I'm sure part of it is embarrassment, because none of them are going to walk out there and fight this guy. And David's going, somebody go kill him. Somebody go shut him up. And they're scared, going, just get out of here. And he's probably looking at them going, well, who knows the inner conversation within the family there a little bit, or with anybody else, but look at it as is kind of mocking them as well. What's going to be done for this? And they're like, just go. We don't want you here. So he then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. And the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. We'll go and fight him. He said, I'll go. Young man, I'll go take him on. I ain't afraid of him. And I'm sure the people that were there were thinking, yeah, that's because he's just a young kid who doesn't know the realities of war. He's so big and bad, but yeah, we know what's waiting down there in the valley. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. He said, you don't know what to do, man. This guy's a killing machine. And you've never even seen battle. This is the first time you're coming out to watch it, really. He said, you don't know what it's like out there. And this guy has been in battles since he was a kid because he's so huge. And so there's no way you're going to go down and fight him. You can't do it. He's trained. He's a trained professional soldier. You're a shepherd. It goes on and says, but David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. David said, I've been in fights, just not with Philistines. And he said, but I've taken on lions, I've taken on bears, I have rescued sheep from their teeth, I have fought with them, I have killed them. I know what it's like to worry for my life or to be scared for my life. And he said, that's not my big thing. But you know what? I'm not worried about this guy. He's defying God. He's defying us. He is mocking God. And so this battle's already won. Now, the Israelites knew this truth when they came into the land. That was a few hundred years ago. And now they've been kind of complacent, even though with Saul, they relearned that truth of when God was with them, they would defeat their enemies because God would go before them and defeat them. But apparently, they forgot that again. Because like I said, they didn't even inquire of God. Should we even be here? They were just doing it on their own power, their own thought. And, I think we kind of do that sometimes ourselves. We get into situations and we think, how can I fight this? How can I get through this? How can I get beyond this? How can I go to the next level, whatever, when the whole time we should be stepping back and saying, okay, God, how do I approach this? What should my next move be? And not this is what I'm going to do. Now, God, you bless it. Because sometimes we pray like that too. I've already made up my mind. Now, God, make it happen. Rather than, God, what should my next move be? And David is relying on God in this situation. He's not relying on his own strength. He's not looking at the statistical sheet and saying, this is how many men this guy's killed. This is how strong his swing is. This is how big he is. David's like, all I know is this guy is mocking God and he's got to go down. We can't stand back and listen to this anymore. It says, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. And again, we see David with this attitude of, I killed a lion, I killed a bear. Oh, wait, let me correct that. I didn't. God did. God delivered me from the hand of the lion and the paw of the bear. God delivered me from those animals. And if he can deliver me from them, who's this guy? And there's been a lot of theories, and as we read on here about how, Goliath was really outgunned when David came down to him because he was older, he was having physical ailments, he probably wasn't up to his game anymore, he might have had some things that were really hampering his physical abilities to fight, whatever. And we'll see one of them that I'll point out that people use as a kind of an anchor point for that. But I think we have to remember the fact that obviously Goliath was still somewhat viable as a fighting machine because nobody else would go stand against him. He had a reputation. And it wasn't just an old reputation and a bunch of old wives' tales. Nobody from Israel wanted to go out and stand against this guy. So he was able to do something that made them all go, I still think he can win this. And nobody would step out against him. Saul said to David, go, the Lord be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them, so he took them off. Here's another thing that people sometimes add into this story is that they were too big for David. And that's why he couldn't wear them, because they were too heavy, they were too big, they didn't fit right. And we want to get this picture of this young man with dad's clothes on, kind of a thing. But that's not what it says. What it says is, David said, I'm not used to wearing all this stuff. And I'm not going to get used to it in a few minutes. And I'm not going to go down and face that guy with stuff I'm not familiar with and that I've never used and never worn. I can't move in this. And so it's not really so much a, wow, I'm just such a little kid that I can't wear adult clothes. It's, I'm not used to wearing armor and a sword and carrying a shield and stuff. That's not me. And I don't have time to train in all this stuff. And it's definitely a different fighting style when you're out there watching the sheep and you're just in a tunic and you got your little staff and a sling. That's way different than when all of a sudden you're armed out for battle. And he's not trained to go out and fight. That's what they were saying earlier. You're not trained to go out. This guy's a warrior. He says, yeah, I'm not trained to use a sword. I'm not trained to use a shield or a spear. I'm not trained to fight in armor. It's a different game. I can't do this. It's not me. And so he took it off. and said, I'm going to go out there the way I know how to approach him. This is the way I know how to fight off an enemy. And besides, God's got it. I don't need a shield. I don't need armor. I need God. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He says, oh, man, you got to be kidding me. This little punk's coming out here to fight me? For 40 days I've been out here taunting the armies of Israel, and this is the best they got? They sent me the bread and cheese boy? And he said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And this is one of those little words, sticks, plural. But it says David was carrying a staff. So they have blown this into a different situation where they said that maybe he had double vision even. He was having some health ailments because it looked like maybe David was carrying more than one. I don't know how far in depth we can take from that one word because David's coming out and he said, what, are you going to bring sticks against me? I don't know how in depth we can go. In the Hebrew, it's a little bit more descriptive, but I still think that we have to look at the fact that this is not a fight that can be explained by medical reason. This is not a fight that can be explained by any natural course other than God was with David, and David won this because of God's provision. Not David's skill with a sling. Because that's the other thing you'll see. And I'm going to tell you right now, slings are deadly weapons. And in the hands of a person who knows how to use them, they are way wicked. I was down at a place in southern Israel, and we walked up to the gates. And between the stones that built the city wall are sling stones that are embedded into those cracks and stuff. Do you know what kind of force you'd have to sling a stone from far enough away that you're not going to get massacred at the gate and be able to embed it into those little cracks and crevices in the stones? They're coming pretty quick. And so you can look up examples of people who have trained with slings and how they can kill animals and that kind of stuff. David goes out there, he takes 5 stones, he puts them in his sling, he walks out there with it, and that's what he's going to use because, again, that's what he knows. That's what he is trained with, and they are extremely lethal. And it says, and the Philistine cursed David by his gods. This is a God fight. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. He doesn't say, I come at you with my sling, or I come at you with my stick. He says, I come at you in the name of the Lord. That's who you're defying. You brought your shield, you brought your sword, you brought your javelin, you brought your spear out here. You came out here to fight a conventional fight, but you called on your gods and you defied mine. I'm coming out here in the name of the God of Israel. That's who this war's with. And so he came out to represent God, and he put his faith in God and his trust in God. And it says, this day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. David said, here's my purpose, not to enslave you, because you remember that was the deal. Goliath says, send somebody out. If I win, you're our slaves. If you win, we're your slaves. David said, yeah, that's not why I'm out here, because I'm not coming to enslave your people. I'm coming to serve the carcasses of your people to the birds and the wild animals. Not just yours, but all of them as well, because people are going to know that God won this fight. That's what David's wish is. David doesn't want to be held up as the slayer of Goliath. David wants people to know that God and the God of Israel is more powerful than anything else because he's the one true God, the God Almighty. So he says, I'm doing this for God. I'm not doing this for my fame. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. Thump. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Goliath is moving forward for the attack. He's leaning into it. Boom. Right in the forehead. Stone busts his skull, busts into his forehead, and he just face plants. Boom. Big battle, huh? But God was guiding that stone. David threw it. He flung it. But it was on a mission. It was on course, and it struck him, and he fell down. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. No conventional battle, no big drawn-out drama thing. He just, boom, killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel with Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Two of the cities of the Philistines down in the plains. Gath is where Goliath is from. Ekron's another one of the cities of the Philistines down there. And when David killed Goliath, they see this guy fall forward. I'm sure from where they were at, they didn't even see the stone being flung. But they see Goliath fall. The next thing they see is David drawing out his sword and cutting off his head. Boom. There. Battle belongs to the Lord. It's done. As soon as they did that, the Philistines all freaked out. This is not good. And they had no intention of keeping their promise of being the slaves of the Israelites. So when Goliath fell, they turned around and started running towards their cities. We need to get inside of our cities. We need to get the doors shut. We're going to be fine. Judah, when they saw David kill Goliath, they went, "That's our boy." Even the guys who went, "Man, that guy's going to get killed." They went, "Yeah, that's him. That's the man." And so they come running forward and started charging out to chase after the Philistines. The Philistines were not ready to leave. They weren't standing there with their bags packed. They were standing there, and when Goliath fell, they took off and just started running. They didn't grab nothing, because here comes the armies of Israel and Judah and come marching across that field at them, and they started to pursue them, and God delivered them into their hands, just as David had predicted. And so there were bodies of Philistines strung from the valley of Elah all the way down that valley to Gath and Ekron. Just bodies everywhere. And it says, their dead were strewn along the Sha'arim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. Like I said, they're expecting Goliath to win. They're all out there to watch the show. They're on the hill. When Goliath fell, they left. So Israel come back and went, "Hey, wait, we got all their stuff." So they plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, your majesty, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. And David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." So another one of the things that's kind of confusing we talked a little bit about last week is some of this stuff is not chronological. It reads pretty chronological, but the fact that he didn't know who David was, the fact that he didn't know that he was from Jesse, the fact that some of those kind of things, you would think, well, that doesn't seem possible if last week he was playing for him and soothing him. Part of that could be attributed to the fact that Saul was kind of losing his mind. Part of it could be attributed to that he really didn't know. who David was at that time when he was playing that music. And even when he came forward, didn't ask his heritage or who he was, but just the fact that he was willing to go out and fight him, and they'd been taunted for 40 days, he let him go. And then also it says that when David was done with the battle, he went and took the head to Jerusalem. But then a little bit later, he's standing before Saul with the head. So again, it's not the chronology of this is exactly the events. David didn't take the head and run all the way to Jerusalem and then come all the way back to Saul with it. He would have taken it by way of talking to Saul to take it back to Jerusalem. Also, why Jerusalem? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later maybe. But it wasn't Saul's capital. Jerusalem was not the capital of Israel until after David becomes king. Just a few little things that people have said, well, why? Well, some of them we have answers to, some of them we don't have great answers to. But that's the basic story of David and Goliath and what we have in Scripture with it. And again, the thing we're supposed to see, I think, in that is, though we can kind of pick it apart and try to find out all those little intricate things in there, the bigger picture is what we're looking at. And the fact that